Welcome back. In this module, we are going to look at the risk management process. As we know, there are many different risk management approaches, but in this course, we are going to use the process from NIST because it is freely available to everyone and closely aligns with the international standards ISO IEC 27005 and ISO IEC 31000. NIST Special Publication 800-39, Revision 1, 2012, describes the risk management framework in 4 parts. The center of the process is the central function, which is to frame the risk. There are 2 significantly different ways to interpret this diagram, as a cycle of activities in which each turn around the loop has frame as a starting point, then moving to assess, respond, and ending at monitor, or as a set of 4 major activities that constantly interact with each other in no fixed sequence. The cyclic view of risk management promotes a calm, deliberative planning process, one that starts with a broad sense of goals and objectives. In many ways, this is ideal, and for organizations that are not immediately under attack or trying to rapidly establish a new and novel way of taking advantage of an opportunity. It requires taking the long view of objectives, goals, and priorities. It is a strategic risk management planning process. Contrast that with the interactive view of major risk management activities being in no fixed sequence by means of a few simple scenarios. In the first scenario, an entrepreneurial startup organization knows from common sense that it has to carry out a starter set of safety and security steps before it can even begin to operate. It locks the doors of its office or workspace, and it carries out basic, prudent cybersecurity hygiene measures. Later, as their plans and strategies develop more depth and meaning, they can consider a broader, deeper view of risks. In the second scenario, a mid-sized private school system finds that one of its administrative systems has been subject to a ransomware attack. It cannot wait to frame the risk, gain management's view of risk tolerance, plan, and then attempt to contain the ransomware. However, after the incident is over, they can and should get more deliberate about their risk management planning and actions. The final scenario involves a nonprofit humanitarian relief organization that has been informed by a local aid worker that they've heard the organization may be the focus of attacks by one or more local groups opposed to their presence. The organization might choose to immediately increase their monitoring of such precursors, signals, and their monitoring of indicators from their current systems and business processes. In parallel, they may want to do some deliberate crisis management planning to be better prepared if an attack happens in the very near term. It's worth noting that in 2018, NIST sought to make the concepts of cybersecurity risk management and mitigation more accessible to a much broader range of businesses, nonprofit organizations, and even to private individuals than had been using NIST publications before. NIST's cybersecurity framework, CSF, streamlines the thinking about risk to a 5-step process, which they emphasize can and should be viewed as an a la carte menu of guidelines. These steps include identify risks, protect against identified risks, detect the occurrence of an incident, a risk event becoming a reality, such as an intrusion or data breach attempt, respond to incidents as they occur, and recover from incidents. NIST's documents and presentations about the CSF all emphasize that organizations should start where they need to right now and then grow into using the other steps as time and circumstances allow. The EU has also been working on a comparable effort to simplify and demystify the body of best practice knowledge about information systems risk management. As an SSCP working with an established, larger organization, you would probably not have a major role in the broader strategic planning of risk management activities. Instead, it's more likely that you'd be assisting in system-level or process-focused risk assessment, control monitoring, or incident response and recovery activities. If you're working with a smaller organization or one that lacks any kind of risk management and mitigation plan and program, you might very well have the opportunity to help them fill that planning void. With all of that as context, we will look at risk management throughout this chapter and in subsequent chapters broadly from the cyclical or sequential task view for simplicity of presentation only. The real world often does not let us deal with risk in such a deliberate way. First, let's take a look at frame risk. To frame a risk means to describe the risk in the context of the organization and the situation in which the risk may be present. The language and value structures of the organization and the terminology of its business logic, processes, and marketplaces are used to help the risk analyst communicate more effectively with the organization's most influential leaders and decision makers at all levels. This can, and in many cases should, extend to being able to state the risk in terms and in ways that line-level employees, vendors, customers, or investors can all understand and appreciate. Risk management must always be conducted in alignment with the goals, mission, and culture of the organization. This requires communication with senior management to understand the attitude of the organization toward risk. Some organizations are, by their very nature, averse to risk and try to avoid any risk that could pose a significant impact on the business. On the other hand, other organizations embrace risk and the opportunities that it provides. To further complicate issues, there can often be a wide difference in the attitude toward risk from different departments in the same organization. For example, sales is energetic and much more risk tolerant than finance, which may be very careful and risk averse. Understanding the organization and the attitude of senior management toward risk is, more often than not, the starting point for getting management to take action regarding risks. Does management welcome risk or want to avoid it? When we conduct a risk assessment, we must do it in consideration of management's attitude or appetite toward risk. It would be irresponsible to be overly careful and recommend strict risk response actions for an organization that embraces risk, while the reverse is true in an organization that is highly risk averse. Properly framing risk also needs to consider both internal and external factors that can influence the risk management approach, such as laws or regulations that mandate how an organization must address risk, and service level agreements, SLAs, that an organization must meet even in the event of a serious incident. Risk management should also be aware of imminent major projects and pending changes that could affect the risk environment. Most organizations will not be able to conduct a single risk assessment for the entire organization and will instead break the process into manageable sized pieces, perhaps based on a single product or service, line of business, type of threat, or geographic location. This requires a careful definition of the scope of the risk management effort to ensure that the risk effort is focused on the area within the scope of the defined risk management effort.